come before you today to represent future generations and to accuse the people of the world of gross negligence.
Discovery, 8:50 Thursday. A report on the findings of the United Nations Environment Programme debate, the state of the planet.
The purpose of the hearing is to present and to challenge in a vivid way both facts and opinions about what we, the human race, are doing to our global habitat.
No society today wants to live within the resources of its own environment. It wants resources from everywhere else. And in the process, nobody recognizes what is being done to the environment because it has no interest.
Discovery, the state of the planet, 8:50 Thursday.
And good evening once again. Scott McKinlay with ABC Late News. The federal government will set up a panel of community representatives to look at the proposed assets test on pensions. As Greg Turnbull reports from Hobart, the Prime Minister announced the move because of what he said was widespread confusion about the impact of the pension test.
The assets test was the main item on the agenda at today's Cabinet meeting, following Mr Hawke's announcement yesterday that the whole question would have to be reviewed. Mr Hawke had said that Cabinet would come up with an alternative, more acceptable approach, which retained the basic principle of paying pensions only on the basis of need. When he emerged from today's meeting, the alternative approach was revealed as a new committee.
We have decided to establish a broadly based panel of relevant community representatives to advise on how the objective may best be achieved by acceptable amendments to the legislation which is before the Parliament.
Mr Hawke said the assets test principle had overwhelming community support, but there was also considerable confusion as to who would be affected. The assets test was to have been introduced by November this year, but today neither the Prime Minister nor the Minister for Social Security, Senator Grimes, could say when the amended test would be applied.
I'm going to, in consultation with Don, appoint this committee, acquaint them with the importance that we attach to it, and we would obviously be hoping that they would be able to give us their advice within a relatively short period.
Iran today repeated its threat to close the Straits of Hormuz, through which oil from the Gulf states is shipped. Tehran radio said that if Iran's key oil installation at Karg Island was threatened by either Iraq or powers supporting Iraq, Iran would not hesitate to close the straits. President Reagan has warned that the United States will not stand by and let Iran disrupt oil supplies by closing the Hormuz Straits. He said that for some time America and some of its allies had had a naval force in the Arabian Sea ready to prevent this happening. A major expansion of sand mining operations on North Stradbroke Island was announced today. Consolidated Rutile Limited will spend more than $30 million on opening up a new area on the southern tip of the island.
The expansion of sand mining on the island was triggered by recent increases in mineral sand prices, particularly for rutile. The new project will make Consolidated Rutile, already the largest producer of rutile in Australia, a major world producer, only second behind Sierra Leone. Production from the island's rich, heavy mineral sands will jump from 50,000 tonnes at present to 80,000 tonnes of rutile, and nearly a similar increase in zircon production a year. The new area to be mined will create an additional 60 jobs on the island, and $4 million will be spent on roads, water, electricity and housing. The Managing Director, Dr. David Moore, says the project will assure the mining operations on the island well into the next century, and on that point, does he expect more opposition from the conservationists?
We'd like to think not. We've consulted with them and understand that they recognise, as the Cameron McNamara report showed, that sand mining has a part to play in that area, together with the environmental conditions and tourism.
What about the security of your export licence? The federal government is clamped down on Moreton Island.
Export licences, we believe, will be granted quite easily because environmental clearance has been obtained from the Federal Minister for the Environment, who recently visited the area.
Journalists employed by Queensland Newspapers Proprietary Limited have walked off the job until Monday. The strike action will affect publication of the Courier Mail and the Sunday Mail, but the company's management is expected to put together a newspaper. The journalists, members of the Australian Journalists Association, are seeking an increase in a disability allowance for using computer terminals. Journalists employed by the Telegraph are expected to meet tomorrow to consider joining the dispute. Asia's newest independent nation, Brunei, today celebrated its nationhood with a grand parade and national dancing. The ABC's Bob Worth reports.
Brunei, a small Malay Muslim state on Borneo Island, is ruled by a 38-year-old sultan, Sir Muda Hassan al Bolkiah, who, together with members of his family, totally dominate every aspect of government. The sultan has 2 wives. Today's independence celebration brings together many Asian leaders, including the head of every member state of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Brunei is ASEAN's 6th and newest member. Prince Charles represented Britain, which still has close economic and diplomatic ties with the Islamic Sultanate. Many of Brunei's small population of not much more than 200,000 people were present at the newly constructed National Stadium for this colourful independence celebration. Brunei owes its massive wealth to significant deposits of oil and gas, much of it exploited by the shell companies. This wealth does permeate through to the people, none of whom pay income tax. Brunei is not strong on democratic principles, and diplomatic observers see the possibility of a future undercurrent of instability if the Sultan does not relax his rule, which is sometimes called autocratic.
Identification cards with photographs will be issued to high school students in Rockhampton in a campaign against underage drinking. Hoteliers and nightclub operators today agreed to test the plan. Young people attempting to buy liquor will be asked to produce identification, and if they can't prove they're 18 or older, they won't be served. The new system has the support of senior police in Rockhampton and the state opposition leader and member for Rockhampton, Mr. Keith Wright.
When I was a younger person, it was probably the 17 and 18-year-olds that were drinking, because the age limit was then 21. We're now talking about 13, 14 and 15-year-olds drinking, paralytic after going to a disco somewhere. We've got a lowering of the age group, and we must pull it up. They have no right to be there to start with. The parents are not carrying out the responsibilities, and it's part of the growing drug abuse problem, whether it be marijuana or what it is. Here we're dealing with alcohol, but it's part of a growing drug abuse, and it's a social problem for the community.
The Australian priest, Father Brian Gore, has failed to get the Philippine court authorities to let his trial for murder go forward without interruption. Instead, the judge has set 2 days a week for the hearing of the charges against Father Gore, 2 fellow priests, and 6 church lay workers.
Father Gore and his fellow defendants walked from the jail, surrounded by supporters. But despite the well-wishes, he set off with little confidence in the day's proceedings. The resumption of the trial, he said, was no more than a showcase displayed for the visit of Australia's Foreign Minister, Mr. Hayden, to Manila tomorrow.
Oh, I don't feel, I just feel blasé in a sense, because I don't expect anything to happen.
Why don't you think anything will happen today?
Well, I think this hearing is just purely window dressing for Mr. Hayden.
It's nearly 10 months since Father Gore and his fellow priests and church workers were charged. In the brief hearing so far, only one witness has appeared. So today, the lawyers for the defence strove to bring matters to a head, to have the trial proceed uninterrupted and in a set place with the prosecution witnesses identified. Father Gore and his co-defendants expect to call up to 137 witnesses. At the pace of the trial so far, they say proceedings could take up to 5 years. This is Jeffrey Leach in Bacolod in the central Philippines for ABC News.
Doctors at Sydney's Royal North Shore Hospital have implanted a revolutionary electronic device into a New Zealand man suffering from severe heart disease. It was only the second such operation in Australia. The first was in Melbourne on Monday.
The patient's name is Patrick Gilmore, a New Zealander in his mid-50s. His heart's in such bad shape that he's been near death nearly 20 times in the last 6 months. Yesterday, in preparing him for this operation, paramedics had to jolt his heart alive 13 times. Doctors say Mr. Gilmore has defied the odds. One told me the fact he was still alive was fairly astounding. His last chance is this metallic device about the size of a large cigarette box. Its official name is an automatic implantable cardioverter defibrillator. Its purpose is to shock Patrick Gilmore's heart out of any irregular beat. In these remarkable pictures, the surgeon, Mr. Alan Gale, describes how the operating team will deliberately stop their patient's heart in order to test the device.
Yes, his heart will stop, and we've got to start it again. We obviously have to test the device to make sure it works. There's no point in putting in a device not knowing whether it works, and this is the most dangerous part of the operation. when we do induce sudden death, you'll see his heart just shivering like a bag of worms. Well, then there'll be no circulation, and we have to get him out of that fairly quickly.
The next step was to implant the defibrillator and wrap up a 2-hour operation described later as very successful. Afterwards, an elated Mr. Gale spoke of his hopes for his patient's recovery.
The experience overseas in America, where all the R&D was done on the device, the expectations at 12 months are that about 20% of people who have the device will have died. But bear in mind, this is in a group of people, all of whom have an expectation of life of less than 5 or 6 weeks anyway.
So you're hopeful?
Oh, yes. I would think that this man's chances of surviving to Easter time were very few, and before the operation, if the device continues to work in the way we've demonstrated it did today, then he'll still be comfortable then.
That's all the news for now. Our next television bulletin, noon tomorrow. Now the forecast. For Queensland, rain and storms about the Gulf and Cape York Peninsula. Isolated showers and storms in the central and southern inland tonight. A few showers on the central coast. Isolated showers in other coastal districts. And a flood warning is current for the McIntyre River. Brisbane area, an early morning shower, then fine. Expected temperature range 22 to 29 degrees. And for viewers in the Northern Territory, scattered showers and storms north of Tennant Creek with rain areas over the top end. Fine in the south. Good night.
Let's see if you got some of your teeth here. Open your mouth. Oh, you got a little bit in there. Can you say hello to everybody?
In the snows of New Hampshire, former Vice President Walter Mondale follows the long, hard path to the White House. But before he can begin to take on Ronald Reagan, he has to beat off the challenge of 7 Democratic rivals.
I'm disgusted and tired of all the vague promises. Is this going to be a Democratic Party that promises everything to everybody and runs up $170 billion a year? Let me finish. I'll tell you why it is. It's because your administration gave us 21% interest rate.
8 men dreaming of the presidency. Meet them all together and at each other's throats. The Democratic Dreamers, next on Four Corners.
Saturday at 7:30. Tomorrow at 7:30, the premiere of Time Was, the series exploring the last 60 years, a decade at a time. Following our public affairs program, Squadron sees a routine operation fail and an investigation reveals a totally unexpected explanation. Hot Black continues at 5 to 10, and after the late news, Grundy. And at 11:05, Day 2 highlights of the '84 Australian Swimming Championships. That's tomorrow on ABC.